Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you all had a good lunch. Uh, the topic for today is global data at scale, how KPMG powered their front office transformation to really make a difference for our business. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Bindu Birur. I head the data engineering delivery organization inside of KPMG. I've been with the firm for the last 5 years, and really excited to do this session and kind of share our story with this group. All right. So here's kind of a high-level view of what exactly the KPMG front office transformation is. As you can see, right, like if you look at those 4 quadrants, this was really not like a technology play. It was really a way to change the culture and behavior of the entire KPMG firm on how we operate, how we sell, how we offer a unified platform for a lot of our internal partners and customers to do like account management, campaign management, opportunity management, and relationship management. So with the KPMG firm, we are a federated organization. There's a tendency for all of the functions to do their own thing. So it was very important to build this kind of the unified platform to support like a particular common way of doing account management and like just the overall sales. So this program actually kicked off probably like 3 years ago or something. It's already up and running. And we have really made a significant business, impact to our business and just the overall growth of our KPMG firm. So one of the things I just wanted to draw your attention to is like the data and reporting quadrant. Usually, it's like an afterthought, but one thing, which was very particular from the leadership was they wanted to make sure we get our data right. Like we offer like trusted data to our customers, a trusted data into the Salesforce platform, and like this was like the highest priority. So we kind of took the time, the energy and all the resources to really build a platform of global scale where we could, make sure like we kind of create this central data hub to bring all of the data and like, populate it in a trusted and confident manner into our Salesforce platform. All right, so
You want to come?
there's a little bit of lag. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, now this is kind of a good segue into what this global lake at scale meant for the front office transformation. A little bit of history, when we first stood up our front office transformation, we built a US lake in the US firm, like to support a lot of this, this transformation. So we actually worked with our Databricks team and stood up this lake. And today this is a highly mature platform, what we are operating on. But one of the things with FOT which happened was FOT decided to go global, where they decided to offer this, not like, kind of the US was the blueprint and the poster child for enabling that common platform. So we decided like, okay, we want like the other member firms to adopt this same platform so that like they could all be talking the same language and like kind of sharing that information in a very seamless way. So that's when, this idea of building a global lake was conceived, right? So we had this very rare and unique opportunity last summer to build a global data lake at scale, right? And the good news was, we already had a US lake stood up, and we had all of the best practices, what we had learned by building that lake. So we brought that in to build this brand new global lake in Western Europe. So it was important to kind of onboard a lot of the the EMA and some of those countries. So to maintain like the GDPR and like the data boundaries, it was important to set up this lake in the European West region. So here are like, if you look at this kind of the pie chart, so there were a few tenets we took into play when we built this global lake. We made sure like we use repeatable framework. So we are very proud of the metadata-driven framework what we set up. We made sure we have the ability to rapidly ingest data by using the parallelism of Spark and all of that. And also this becomes that single data hub to bring all of your data sources and kind of curate it, harmonize in this data lake. Some of the other very important tenets for us was the security and compliance. It was very important to get this right, especially us being a very risk and compliance driven organization, and this being in the European region, we had to comply with a lot of those policies. The data quality and governance was another important tenet which we took into play when we built this lake. And a lot of that was embedded inside of our framework, what we did. And this global lake, I'll probably get into this into my next slide, where we talk about how it is actually set up like a hub and spoke model, and how we share data across the borders. And of course, right, since this was a global lake, and we are 150 plus member firms, it was important to set up this platform in such a way that we could scale both horizontally and vertically to bring data from different sources, from different member firms, and make it available inside this lake. All right.
You can go slow, we have time.
Okay. So this is a slide I really like to spend some time on. This is a slide, left to right, we all get to see. What are the different sources? How do you kind of take this data into our medallion architecture? We have a lot of our architecture group and innovation team too, where we establish those best practices of using an industry standard medallion architecture, right? So I think it was important to take this data through that, through the layers of our lake, right? Like the bronze, silver, and gold, and curate this data. And in the process, right, what we were bringing in, was reference data, master data, and we were setting this up inside the lake for, for future use, right? And if you look at the bottom, right, so as I mentioned, so this global lake was kind of the central hub, where we would bring in all of the CRM data from the Salesforce and each of the individual member firms, sources, right? They had disparate data sources. Sometimes it would be files, sometimes it would be just typical SAP systems and all of that, right? So it was important to bring this data in, convert it into a shape and format where we could then take it and distribute it to all the different member firms. So what we were doing along the process is we were standardizing the way we are taking this data in. We all agreed on a certain set of mappings, right? This is the way this data is going to look like. To give an example, right? Opportunity data, account data, right? So we came up with a very standardized structure to say, this is the way the data is going to be stored, and this is the way the data is going to get distributed, right? And along the way, right? So at right now, when we first started this, we had the ability to bring in one member firm at a time. But that was very sequential in nature. So they wanted us to build a way we could accelerate this and do it more than one at a time. So right now, with a lot of our our repeatable way of doing things, by employing frameworks, by employing accelerators, by employing AI, right? We are able to now onboard more than one member firm at a given time, right? And some of this also depends on getting alignment with individual member firms and bringing that data in, right? And the other very unique thing we did was the way we shared the data with the member firms, right? So we used the Databricks standard of delta sharing. So this was more of D2D. I think there was a few sessions here talking about where the downstream systems, if they have Databricks, you would share data with them. So we would, share kind of our high-level mappings to say that this is the way we're going to share this data, and that's what we accepted on the other side. And going back to the fact, right, just if you look at some of the things we took into play, right? We took a very software-driven approach to when we built this lake, right? So our frameworks, what we call as our one framework. We kind of templatized all of the notebooks, right? So the amount of coding which like data engineers had to do was very like limited, right? I mean, more than the limited, what we wanted to make sure is they all follow the same standardized way of like writing and building code. If not, right, things would get out of hand. And we use like, like scaled providers to get this work done. And it would be very simple to give them training on our frameworks, give them like, to say that these are the standards and best practices you need to follow. And it would be a lot easy to onboard like data engineers, data analysts to come and operate on this lake. And this data, right, like would get shared to, like further lakes downstream. And like, it's a very, it's almost like a mesh, right? Like, so the data ability to share it across lake after lake is the way we set it up, right? And in some cases, we also had like Power BI like hooked up to this lake, so through which we could get like automated dashboards. We could do a lot of like the monitoring, and if anybody needed like canned and standard reports, they would be able to get out of this lake.
Yeah.
All right.
Next.
Yeah. All right. So this is something very unique we did inside the lake. Again, back to the point that we were very, we wanted to like honor a lot of the security and data segregation principles required, which were laid down by a lot of these member firms. So the way we set up our, our storage, right? But I mean, one thing which was like a no-brainer is we set up like out of the box, security, like Unity catalog was enabled, right out of the day one. So we didn't have that luxury when we built our first lake, but in this case, we employed the latest and greatest, like the Databricks runtimes, the Unity catalog, row-level security, column-level security, right? Like, so we were able to like harness and leverage a lot of those capabilities, which were Databricks was rolling out, for us to consume, right? The other thing we did was, which was very unique, was we segregated the data at like this, storage containers and like, separate storage accounts, so that we achieve like even the physical separation of data across the different zones, right? And we employed like the user-managed identities. That was a new thing which Databricks had rolled out. So that would, ensure like data is like, almost ring-fenced across each of these different zones, right? And nobody is given access to, all those internal layers. It's only in the provision zone is where we bring in the users to bring their BI tool of choice, right? Like it could be an Alteryx or a Power BI or just direct querying, right? Or we could like just say that we will ship these data extracts to you and like, send it where we need to do, right? And GDPR is, I mean, this is something in the works right now. Like and the ability to forget somebody where we could like, remove a particular person or a contact, that is also kind of deployed as a part of this lake.
Good one. Next.
All right, just a couple of minutes, what we did with our metadata-driven framework. I mean, this is probably what we call as our unified ELT framework. We actually now call it as our one framework. So, it's a, the way this was designed, it's gone through like several iterations and versions of this, but this has really been a game changer for us on how we, do our development across the SDLC lifecycle, right? So, a lot of this is like configuration driven, and like, we've also now taken this to the next level, where we have employed some of like, agents on top of it to make like almost like a low-code, no-code platform, right? I mean, there is like code which needs to be done, like business logic and transformation, which is what like, we want the data engineer to focus on, and not do like the mundane tasks of, having to go and rewrite a bunch of like notebook code, which is already pre-written for you, right? So I think that is where this has really stood out, and we have, whatever we have built here, we are now trying to take this and deploy it on like other lakes too, and like, which is like kind of giving us a very like uniform playing field for any like of our engineers to operate on.
Good.
And finally, how can we not talk about AI, right? So we employed a lot of the AI best practices too. And this was if you look at the top left part of the chart, right? Like, so we use the Databricks assistant as it came out. So this became like, that kind of that buddy programmer where people would, a lot of our engineering staff would get to, look and see what kind of suggestions you would get, and that's what they would use to build their code, right? I talked about the generic pipelines, the generic notebooks, like the common ingestion patterns depending on different sources, right? Like if it's more on the type of the source. If you know like the data is coming from like an RDBMS, you would have a connector for it, right? And the same connector would get used by just in a very parameter-driven way. Also, the DQ logs, as the data traverses through our lake, we would be applying data and get it more trusted and confident as it moves through, through our medallion architecture. And everybody runs into like data issues and problems, so we built in like automated, like reprocessing of data, error handling, multi-threading. I mean, this was very helpful for us to, do large amounts of loads back into like our Salesforce platform, which used to be a problem like earlier, right? So I think that really helped us. And like, to get feedback on a lot of this data, we built dashboards for our production support teams, our BAU teams, where they could see like what's happening to our pipeline health and like data and everything. And we, inside of KPMG, we have our unique AIQ platform, where we have rolled out a bunch of agents, and using those agents, we have been able to like, further accelerate our SDLC, right? Like, so we are now getting into building like DQ agents, data engineering agents, like data modeling agents, right? So the goal is to like shrink that SDLC lifecycle as much as possible, and like focus on really more of the important like, engineering work which the team needs to work on. I touched upon the metadata-driven firm framework work we did. So if you see at the bottom left, it's like the less notebooks we use, kind of the better, right? And another thing, what we did was we built a kind of a DQ automated validation tool to compare data, right? It's a very unique hashing algorithm what we built to compare data across like systems from specific system of record to what's coming in the target. This really accelerated like our our DQ steps, our data validation steps, and has immensely helped a lot of our projects, what we are working on. Is that it?
That is all. Good.
Yeah.
So
I think we probably have a minute left. Sorry I took most of the time. I'll probably pause for any questions.
I hope you guys find it interesting, and if you have any questions in details that you're looking for, feel free to ask questions.